So welcome, guys. Well, I will officially start. It's actually 2 minutes in. So welcome to this presentation. I'm really glad you guys joined me. Today, you are going to learn about automation. You're going to learn exactly what automation is, what's a front-end automation, what's a back-end automation. You are going to see automation in action. I'm going to show you uh, actual automation running. We're going to do e-commerce website. We're going to test an e-commerce website. And I'm just going to explain what's manual testing, then what's the difference between automation testing, then we're actually going to see it. And you're going to learn, if you do want to get into automation, what are the skill sets you need to learn, right? There's a list of things you need to know. And of course, my contact information if you want more advice. I have a boot camp. I'll talk about it later on where I'll teach you everything I show you right now. Basically, I'll get you to be an expert in that in my boot camp. I'll talk about that at the end. I'll also give you like a $500 discount on that boot camp. So stay to the end. Just listen in. This will be recorded. So if you have to bounce, that's fine. Just send me a message. I will send out a recording. So no stress, no pressure. I just want you to, just take advantage of it and just learn as much as you can. Really, that's my goal for today. Okay. So what I'm going to do is what I've noticed last time is when people join in, just a lot of people, so it gets unmuted. So I'm going to disable your mics for now, but later on I will enable them so you can ask questions. You don't have to type in your questions. You can just speak at the end, okay? So, but to avoid interruptions, I'm just going to disable it for now, right? I'm going to do that now. But if you have questions, I'll keep my eye on the chat, so I'll try to respond right away. But if it's something that can wait until the end, it can, but just answer because this is a really free form. I'm just going through the slides for a little bit, just really short slides, then going and showing you the code and showing you the setup, showing you automation running. So it's kind of really not very formal. So I will be answering questions in the middle as long as you put it in chat. Okay. So don't feel like you have to wait until the end to ask questions. Right. So I'm going to basically disable for you to be able to unmute yourself. So now everybody will be muted. All right. So my name is Admas Kanfu. I'm a senior software engineer in test, or SDET, right? So it should be software development engineering test, but you can call it software engineering test, SDET, or QA automation. It's pretty much the same thing. When you are an SDET, you are a little bit more involved in the whole development process. As QA automation, you might be a little bit less, more focused on just the automation part and not the rest of it. That's really how people look at it, the difference, but in my eyes, it is pretty much the same. If you're in automation, you better learn everything else too, not just writing tests, but you have to know how everything works. You have to be able to contribute to the team beyond just writing tests. You have to understand how software is built, how it's deployed, all the tools we use in the process. So SDET versus automation, in my eyes, there's the same thing. But if you want to be very technical, there might be a slight difference, right? So I've been an overall engineer for about 16 years now. Actually, it's a little bit more. I went to school for mechanical engineering. I learned mechanical engineering. I got a job for a little bit. Then I went to grad school. After grad school, I could not find a mechanical engineering job. And then I started to look into software testing. I heard about it. I was driving a taxi in San Francisco, and a lot of people that I drive, they're in the software world. So I keep asking people about this field, the software testing field, and it was like 100% positive feedback. So I got into it. So I took a short training for manual testing. At the time, manual testing was still a thing. Right now, manual testing is kind of tough. Everybody wants you to have some automation skill. It's still available. It's still possible, but the competition is just a little high, and everybody, even the manual positions, are expecting you to know a little bit of automation because just everybody wants to get into that advanced level. So I got into that. I learned automation within like 2 months. I was lucky. I ended up in a company that uses Python for automation, and Python is always easier. It's the easiest language to learn out of the other automation languages. So I got lucky. I picked it up. And about a year after I started doing it, I started to like basically teach Python and Selenium and things. So I've been teaching for like over 10 years now, creating self-paced courses. And last year I started this cohort bootcamp, which is like a live program, which I'll talk about later on. So today's agenda, now we're going to talk about what is testing, just explain. I think most people here probably already know what software testing is, what QA is, but I'll just briefly explain it for those who are totally new and just exploring a new career. which is totally fair. And I really like working with people like that, just helping them get into this tech industry, because it's just an awesome industry. It totally changed my life, and I'll try to do the same for others. So I'll start with the basics, then we'll just look at, Python, what it is and how it comes in the picture, just briefly. Then we look at front-end automation. Basically, that's Selenium in the browser. Back-end automation. Then we'll talk about what back-end is, what API is. And then after we write automation, what happens to it? We put it into a CI/CD, like the CI/CD deployment. That's kind of the engineering aspect of, right? It's not just writing tests, but you go beyond writing tests and into how stuff works, right? So after we finish writing tests, we have to integrate it with the rest of the system. So I'll talk about that, and I'll basically open the floor for any random discussion and any questions you guys might have. Anything like that would be open. Okay. That is my agenda. Again, if you have questions, just put it in the chat. I will keep an eye on it and I'll respond. So what is a software testing career? Basically, we're making sure that software meets expectations. That's the most generic but descriptive definition for software testing. It doesn't meet requirements, right? That's really expectation. Doesn't meet expectation, doesn't meet requirement. Making sure the process of releasing software is efficient. Releasing means basically you build it, then you make it available to the end user. It can be the general public, it might be some specific customer. There's a process to do that. From the time you think about it, you design it, you come up with ideas, to the time you implement it, and then you ship it out. There's an entire process. And as test engineers, software testers, we are usually part of that entire process, making sure the product is quality. It meets the expectation, it goes out on time, the process is efficient. So we're really involved in most of the steps, and we are the gatekeepers. We are usually the one that says thumbs up or thumbs down, like if this product is ready to go to the public or not. So we make the call. Usually we make the call at the end. So, but our primary job is quality. And when we say quality, it's not just about does it work or does it not work, but it's also like delivered on time. Does it look right? But everything that has to do with the app and the interaction with the end user, we make sure it goes smoothly. We test any kind of software, really. I focus on web applications. Most of us are used to using web and mobile applications, really. Well, actually, technically desktop too, but web application is anything that you access through the browser. That's really, I focus a lot on that. So Facebook.com, right? That is a web application. They have a mobile version too. They have a mobile application. They have a web application. CNN.com, Walmart.com, Amazon.com, all of those, SuperSQA.com. All of those are web applications. They're applications that run on the web, and you access them through a browser. Then you have mobile applications. You already know, stuff you install on your mobile devices. And those desktop applications are applications that you install on your computer. If you're on your phone, if you're on your computer right now, for example, Zoom, right? You're using Zoom on the desktop. That's a desktop application. You're using the browser. That's a desktop application. So there are people that their job is testing those things. If that's what your company makes, that's what you're going to test. So, and I have a free course called Software Testing Fundamentals. I just published it, so I'm working on it. Like it's 6 hours of it is released, and there's a lot more coming up. So if you just find it on the homepage, supersqa.com, on the homepage, it says software testing. I'll send you a link later on, so you don't have to be distracted. Look at it. If you're totally new and you just want to get started, you can take that course. You can literally start applying for manual positions after that course. I put a lot of thought into that course. It's not some simple basic course. It's like really detailed. Of course, you have to do a lot of work on your own, especially in interview prep and terminology and things like that, because manual testing is most of it is just terminology and processes. So I will include that in the email that I'll send you after. So just be on the lookout. You don't need a degree to be in QA at all. Actually, not at all. Especially these days, in any kind of tech, it's all about skill, right? Most people are looking at skill. In fact, there was a tweet from Elon Musk just I think it was yesterday or something, that he basically was asking for like people to apply, and he was so aggressive. He's like, "Ah, we don't care if you went to school, we don't care what school you went to, just show us your code." So it's just a matter of game. It's a matter of skill. So no problem. I'm looking at a question that says, "Do you need a degree?" Absolutely not. Of course, always a degree is helpful, right? But absolutely not. It's a matter of skill. It really is a matter of skill. You have to know the stuff. You just have to learn the stuff. Okay. So about automation, so I'm going specifically about automation in this slide, but I'll compare it with manual. So if we go back a little bit and think about testing, when we test, like an example would be, everybody uses this example. You're talking about like a login page. Let's say I'm working for supersqa.com, I'm a tester, and we just have this brand new page for the login, or even the application is brand new, and we want to test that login actually works. So there's a page, there's a username, there's a password, there's a submit button, right? At least at minimum, those three things. So my job as a tester is to test that form works or that page works. Does it look right? Are the fields appearing correctly? Are they appearing in the right size, in the right location on the page? The header and everything, whatever the text supposed to be there, the requirement, whatever the requirement is it displayed correctly? Is the spelling there? The color, the font, everything, right? And then not only does it look right, but does it work? So I would have to type in a username, an existing username. Then I'll have to type in a password. Then I'll have to click on submit and see that I was actually able to log in. So that is the test case. I just tested the functionality of that form, that login. Can a valid user log in? I can also test it with an invalid user. I can put in a username that doesn't exist, a random password, click on submit, and I should get some kind of error message, right? A nicely graceful error message that says, hey, this user does not exist, or your password is incorrect. Please try again or reset your password. Some kind of message has to show up. The page should not just blow up, right? Just it shouldn't do weird stuff. That is testing. That's actually negative testing. We're trying to break the system and see how it reacts. It's supposed to be designed so it will react in a proper way, right? So that is a manual testing. That is when you manually go, a human would go to the site, click on login, type the information, click on what is supposed to click, and visually look at it and say what is supposed to happen actually happen. So that's manual testing. If you wanted to look at another example, let's say it's a checkout flow. You have an e-commerce site. We're going to look at an example. You want to make sure customers are able to buy stuff from you from that, and everything works. So manual testing, you would go into the in like a customer. You would act like a customer. You open the page, you search for the product, you add to cart, and you apply a coupon if you need to apply a coupon. You basically go through the checkout process and you see everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. So that's a test case when you're doing it manually. So when you're doing it in automation way, you take the same exact steps, but you write code that will simulate that. So right now, everything I just explained, for example, for the checkout, go search, click on add to cart, click on apply coupon, type in the coupon code, click on checkout, fill in the shipping address, billing address, your name, your email, phone number, fill out all that form and click on submit. And then you should say order success or some kind of message, right? Everything you would have done, you write code that will do that. So that is what automation is. Everything that a human would have done, the code will do it. You would see a browser open and all the things that you would have done, you will see it happening. You're going to see it in a minute. I'm actually going to show exactly this example. Same thing with the login. You write a piece of code, the code would open the browser. All you got to do is hit run, or you're going to schedule it. Usually you don't hit run, but usually once you're done with building it, developing it, you schedule it. You're going to say, hey, I want this test to run every day at 8 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, it would just kicks off. It would open a browser. It would go to the site. It would click what it's supposed to click. It will type whatever it's supposed to type, and it will verify things are working or not working. Okay. So that's what automation testing really is. And we're going to see an example, and it's going to make a lot more sense when you look at the example. So it's testing automatically, and you write the code once and you run it repeatedly, right? Once to write the code, to automate it first, it will take time. Of course, you're writing code. But the beauty of it is it takes time to write it. But after that, once you write it properly, you can run the test as much as you want over and over. You can run it 1 time a day or 10 times a day. It doesn't really matter. It matters on resources, but resources are not really a big deal. You just need a computer to run it. So once you write the test properly, you're just going to just keep running it as much as you need. It is fast, right? That checkout flow I talked about right now, when you're manually doing it, searching and click that, click this, type that. That takes time, right? That whole end-to-end flow of checking out might take you 5 minutes as a manual. If you've done it before, if it's the first time, it might take longer. If you've done it before, if you're doing it every day, it still might take you 5 minutes to search and type all of that. The automation can finish it probably in 20 seconds, right? Bam, 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 it just finish it. And now that's just one test case. And normally you have hundreds of those, 100 scenarios. You like just for that checkout, you can have 10, 20, right? Like checkout was one item in the cart, two items in the cart, a digital item and a physical item in the cart. What if the customer is new? What if the customer is existing? What if there is already an item in the cart and you add more items to the cart? What if you use a coupon? You don't use a coupon. What kind of coupon? All of those scenarios, you're going to have to test them. So you can imagine there are several different test cases you can have for that one flow. So it's a lot of tests. And if you want to manually do them every day, it's going to take forever to do, right? But once you write the code to do it, which takes a little bit of time, but once you write that, it's just very repeatable, it's very fast, and it's very reliable. Once you write it correctly, it's always going to run the same way, right? With humans, there's human error all the time. Depends what the tester had, what kind of night they had, right? If they had a rough night, today their focus might not be there, so the way they test things might not be the same. They might make errors. But with automation, sure, if you code it wrongly, then every day is going to be wrong. But if you code it correctly, it's going to be very reliable. It's going to do the same thing over and over and over again. And you might be wondering, why would you want to test something over and over again? If you already tested, you went through the checkout, it works. You went through the login, it works, and you might just call it a day. But that's not true. The way software works in the back, it's really interconnected, right? We do our best to design software that does not interact with each other, that does not depend on each other, but we can go as far as, nothing is perfect, especially back in the days when things were created. We use a lot of libraries. Like you have a login page, it's done, it's created, everything is good. Let's just talk about Facebook. And then you have another team that's working on uploading photos. You upload photos into Facebook, and they're working on the software that deals with that. Now they make changes there that has nothing to do with the login page. They're not touching the login page, but they're working on the uploading pictures part of the application. But those two parts of the application, they might share something. They might use some kind of library somewhere, some code, some resource. They both might be using the same thing. And the team that are changing things here for the pictures, they might change something that would affect this guy, right? So even though you didn't change anything here, just because things have changed somewhere else that you have no idea about, this can break. So you have to keep testing this. Even though you already tested it and you're not making any change, every day you have to make sure it's tested. Every day, whatever you decide that multiple times a day, every week, every 2 weeks, especially every time before a new code gets released, the whole application has to be tested. So that's why it's important to be repeatable, and doing those things manually is not really reasonable, right? Because it takes so much time. You have so many test cases. Being able to do the same thing over and over and over again, it's not feasible. There are situations where manual makes more sense. For example, if I build something that is temporary, like let's say I have this webinar event today, right? Let's say I build a page that is basically for today's, like about a bunch of information for today. Would I want to automate that? Probably not, because that's going to live for a week, for 2 weeks. After that, that page is not required, right? So some kind of feature on the application that's supposed to be there for like just a week. Would I invest time automating that? It depends how much resources I have. Sure, if I have enough resources and it's a quick and easy automation, go ahead. But most likely I would manually test it, and after a week, I'm not going to need the whole product anyways. So you have to make decisions. Not every single thing is automatable, and it doesn't make sense to automate every single thing. So now I said you would write code. You would write code to simulate the stuff that you would do, right? To become automation. So what do you need to become an automation engineer? To be able to do those things I just talked about, to create automation scripts, what do you need? So this slide, for most of you, I think this slide is kind of important, because if you want to just go, if you want to learn with my guidance, obviously I'll get into a lot of detail, but if you want to do a self-paced way of learning, this is what you want to focus on. So at minimum, you need a programming language, you need a testing tool, and you need SQL. Okay, those three things. So I could have put SQL part of programming language because it is a language. The L literally stands for language, structured query language. But I like to put it separately because it's a little bit different than the rest of the programming languages. And even as a manual tester, you want to learn SQL. You want to know SQL, even as a manual tester, because you're manually testing something, you always need to go, well, not always, but a lot of times you need to go to the database and verify things manually. And the way you talk to databases is through SQL. So those are the minimum. Programming language, some kind of testing tool, and SQL. So with the programming languages, in automation, the most popular ones are Python, Java, and JavaScript. Those three languages are really popular in this industry. Python and Java are way up there. JavaScript is really becoming really popular now, right? These days, I can't even say Python and Java are way up there. I think that those three are just as popular as each other. They're really popular. I recommend Python. Two reasons. Well, I'm biased. Reason number one, I'm a Python guy. That's what I do all day. So I'm biased to Python. But everybody would agree Python is the easiest language to learn, to start, right? For somebody that's never programmed before and you're just learning to write code, Python is by far the easiest to understand. The syntax is easy. It sounds like plain English. It's really easy to get going with Python. Java is a lot harder. JavaScript is like in between, I would say. I would say JavaScript is easier than Java. Um, Python is definitely easiest. So you would choose Python. The way I look at it is if the job market is competitive, even if Java might be a little bit more, in my opinion, Java might be a little bit more popular in the job market, but Python is way easier. So why wouldn't you sacrifice a little bit of popularity for a lot of headache, to give yourself a chance to learn this quicker and get into it much quicker. So personally recommend starting with Python. The only way I would say start with Java or JavaScript is if you already have an opportunity lined up. Like if you have a cousin, a friend that works somewhere and they say, hey, if you learn Java, I'll get you a job, then of course, 100%, go learn Java. Right? Somebody tells you, yeah, if you were to learn JavaScript, you have an opportunity waiting for you, hell yeah, go learn JavaScript right away. But if you're just going to learn a brand new language and go on the market, then start with Python. I strongly recommend that for sure. And just a little side like benefit, Python is everywhere. If you want to get nowadays, we all have to get into AI, right? One way or another, we have to get into AI. People that know AI are going to do much better in our world than people that don't use AI. Python is really heavy in AI. It's used like machine learning is all Python. When you're building stuff with AI, you're using Python. So Python will take you a long way, even outside of the automation, even outside of the software testing world. Python will go a long way. So why not kill two birds with one stone? First of all, you're already, starting a path into automation, and also you're paving the path towards AI world, right? So you're killing two birds with one stone. JavaScript, I can say the same thing because JavaScript, you also learn for automation, but you also can build apps. All the UIs we see, all the front end, all the applications, the front end stuff that loads into the browser, that is built with JavaScript most of the time. So you can say that can be another benefit into learning JavaScript, but you can do all of that with Python also, in combination with JavaScript. So I strongly feel about Python. So now let's say you learn the language. You can learn it in any way. You can take like my self-paced course. You can take a Udemy course. You can take a YouTube. I mean, I don't recommend it because YouTube is so distracting. You need something focused. And you need to be able to ask questions. You need to be able to get help when you're learning Python. So just find whatever resource works for you and just pick up a language and learn a language. Of course, Python is recommended. Then a testing tool. So when we look at testing tools, Selenium and Playwright are really, really popular. There's a JavaScript one. I keep man, yeah. There's another one that's coming up, really become popular. It's specific to JavaScript, Express, I think, Express or something. No, it's not Express, something else. Anyways, Selenium is the most popular. It's been around for a long time. It's really, really popular. Playwright is gaining it's gaining popularity really fast. It's kind of new. I think it's only been in the picture for like 3-4 years maybe, but it is just really, really growing fast. So I think either way, if you choose either one, I'm probably okay with it, but I will go with Selenium because Selenium still dominates the market, and your goal is to expand your opportunities. You want to be able to target as much opportunity as possible, and Selenium will give you that. So Python and Selenium combination will give you a much bigger playing field. Java and Selenium will give you just as much. Okay, so I would choose Selenium. The beauty is once you learn one of the tools, it's so much easier to learn the other ones because they're very similar. The syntax, the way things work is different, but the concept is the same. So once you learn one of the tools, learning the other tool is going to be much easier. Same with the languages. Once you know Python, when you're trying to go learn Java, when you're trying to go learn JavaScript, you don't have to relearn the concepts of programming. You just have to learn the syntax of that specific language. So it's not like it's not the same difficulty as the first time you're learning how to program. So once you learn one, you move on to the next one. Don't try to learn. I strongly say do not try to learn two languages at the same time or two tools at the same time. I really don't recommend that. That's just going to confuse the heck out of you. You really don't want to do that. And focus on one thing. Once you have, let's say you have Python and Selenium on your resume, then you can start to apply for jobs and you can start either learn more things or just solidify your stuff. Just keep practicing. Everything we talk about here is coding. So it's just like a sport. You have to practice. It's not something you just learn by watching videos. Not at all. It's not Netflix. You have to practice a lot. That's one thing I really emphasize. Literally like a sport. I watch a lot of football, American football. I watch basketball. I suck at those. No matter how much I watch them, I'm not playing. I'm not at the court shooting. So I'm not good at that at all. Same thing as programming. You can watch somebody code all day. You're not going to be able to code like they do. So, I mean, that's kind of common sense, but I have to say it. All right, so the next thing you would want to pick up SQL. SQL is pretty straightforward. It's not that confusing. The good thing is it's really easy. The language is really easy once you set it up. It's just simple. So it's just a structured query language. It's a language we use to talk to databases. Almost every application uses a database, and SQL is what we use to read data and to write data. Cypress, that's the one I was thinking of. So there's a JavaScript framework for testing. So there's Selenium, Playwright, and Cypress. Thank you. I appreciate that. Cypress is really also gaining steam. All right, so SQL, I don't have to say much about it. Whether you're manual, whether you're getting started, just learn SQL. It's quite simple. It's not that bad. Once you get those three things, programming language, a tool, and SQL, now you're already an automation engineer. You're not SDET yet, but you are an automation engineer. You can write tests, you can automate tests at that point. Now you want to make yourself more marketable. You want to be able to attack more jobs. So you want to be SDET. So now you want to learn other tools that are related to software development, right? CI/CD tools. That's important because once we write the test is going to go integrate into some kind of CI/CD. Jenkins is the most popular one, still is the most popular one. But then we have GitLab CI, we have GitHub Actions. All of those are tools, but the concept is CI/CD. It's a process. I have a real CI/CD that I'm going to show you. It's a process of somebody builds the code, and how does that code goes from basically the developer's laptop to the final destination, usually the public, like some kind of website where the public can see it. If you notice, all my examples has been about website because, like I said earlier, my experience is on the web. A lot of it is in the web. So Circle CI is another one of the tools, like Jenkins is one tool, GitLab CI is one tool, GitHub Actions is one tool, and Circle CI is another CI/CD tool. Then Docker is simple. You learn it once. It's so fascinating. It's pretty awesome. But it goes with the CI/CD tools. Like whenever you're studying CI/CD tools, if you know Docker ahead of time, it actually really helps. Then you want to pick up one of the clouds. AWS is a cloud, Google Cloud, Azure from Microsoft, IBM. You want to learn those things because all the application, or even the CI/CD stuff, it just works on the cloud. So you have to understand how the cloud works. You don't have to know all of them. You choose one. If it was me, I would choose AWS, but Google Cloud is really popular too. It doesn't matter which route you take. All right, so let's look at some demos. I'll get back to this slide when we talk about APIs and backend testing. So a lot of the examples I talked about so far have been like testing the front end. It's the stuff we see here. But as an automation engineer, you don't just test the front end, you also test the back end. Okay, so let's look at an example of, you know what, I'm going to bring my taskbar here. So I'm going to open VS Code. So VS Code, for those of you who are new, is nothing but a code editor. It is just, what can I say? It's just a place where we write code, right? Like Microsoft Word is where you write documents, right? Google Sheets or Excel is where you create spreadsheets and you use numbers and things like that. So IDE, Integrated Development Environment, is where we write code. It understands code, so it will give us all these fancy colors and things. It's just we spend a lot of our time in this tool. So this is just VS Code. This is not the project I was going to show first. So if we were to look at this is just 3 files. It's the same thing as when you go to your Explorer or Finder. If you're on a Mac Finder, if you're on a Windows Explorer, and you look at all your files and folders and things, that's literally what you see here. We have a folder right there. We have a file here, and the file that ends with .py, that's a Python file. Inside of it, there is Python code. That's this. What you're seeing here is literally Python code. And code is nothing but a bunch of instructions, line by line by line by line, telling the computer what to do, right? It's just do this, then do this. If this happens, do this. If that happens, do this. Just a lot of logic and a lot of instructions telling the computer literally what to do. So Python is a language. The way you command the computer, there's a language. Like you and I right now, we're talking in English, right? I'm saying things in English, you're able to understand it. And right now we're in this file here, we're telling the computer instructions in Python. If we have a Java file, Java is a language. In the Java language, we're giving it instructions. In the JavaScript language, we're giving it instructions. By the way, guys, Java and JavaScript, they're completely different things. So this is just a side note because a lot of people think they're related. Understandably, because one is Java, the other one is JavaScript. They have no relationship at all, other than they're both programming languages. They're completely different languages for completely different purpose. Somehow they have the same name, right? Java and JavaScript. So I just want to bring that because a lot of people think those are the same thing, completely different things. Java is primarily back end, and JavaScript is primarily front end, even though it can do back end. So this is the Python code. Yeah, so it's just a bunch of instructions. The first lines here are basically this is a Selenium script. This is a Python Selenium. It's importing other code. Like when you're writing code, you don't reinvent everything from scratch. There's a lot of code other people already wrote, or there's a lot of code that you wrote yourself that has some functionality, that does some things. So when you're writing something new, you're going to use the stuff you previously wrote. You're going to import that into your file. Let's say you created something that sends out emails, and now you're building something that sends out email. You're not going to have to reinvent the code to process emails and stuff. You're going to import it into your file and use it. So here, Selenium, the people that created Selenium, the people that built Selenium, they gave us a Python library. They basically gave us Python code that we can install. So when we want to use Selenium, we create our own Python file and we import the Selenium stuff. From Selenium, import WebDriver. From Selenium, import this. From this, import that. Import time. This is like importing from the standard library, just from Python. Then we write a bunch of instructions here. So this one here, verify free coupon works. This is like literally a Selenium script. This is when we run the script, this is the first thing that's going to run. We have like a coupon code. This part here, this opens a browser. This is saying open Chrome. So this is a command, right? Remember, I said in Python, we're literally giving the computer commands. We're telling it, do this, do that. This line here, line 35, we're literally telling it, hey, open Chrome. If I change this, if I change this to Firefox, now all of a sudden I change the command to say, hey, open Firefox instead of Chrome. That's literally what that is. So then this is something special to Selenium. It's basically saying, wait 10 seconds before you fail. Then we're saying, go into this URL. Like get means just open this site up. So if I was to check this site, let's see if it's up. This is my local site. Look like this up. This is going to go to this ecom site. So this ecom site, guys, is very easy to build. It's a WordPress site. I have a YouTube videos on how to build it. If you want to practice, especially if you already started learning QA, learning automation, you can build a site like this and practice. I built a site like this, several of them. I have one for the bootcamp because the bootcamp students get access to the backend, the database, the API, read-write access. I have a publicly accessible one. You guys can check it out anytime. Demo store.spreadsqa.com, but make sure it's HTTP, not HTTPS. So this side here, this is for my self-paced video courses. So all my students can use this to practice automation, but I can't give backend access because if I give you backend access to tons of students, they will, they can destroy stuff. Backend means basically you can just go and delete stuff. But the front end, you guys can use it. But the beauty is you can just create one locally. It's totally free. Everything is free. I have videos. I'll try to include it in the email that I'll send if you want. So we use this a lot because we have full control if it's a real e-commerce site that has full functionality of that. So this script, what it's doing is it's going to that site. It's going to add one item to the cart, right? So it's going to go to maybe it takes the first item and click add to cart. It's going to click add to cart. Okay, that's not what happened. It's going to click add to cart. There you go. Right. So it's going to add to cart. It's going to sleep. I slowed down. I added the sleeps. So when I run the script, you get to see it. Otherwise, it's super fast. You can't see it. But right now, I put a 2 second sleep between every step so you can actually see it running. Normally, you don't do that. You don't put sleep in your automation. Then then click cart on the top menu. Then it's going to come and it's going to click on cart right here, right? And then it's going to input coupon code and it's going to hit enter. So the coupon code is this guy, SSQA100. It's going to come here. It's going to go to the coupon code, SSQA100, and it's going to hit enter. Right, this is a step we would have done it manually. So this is a test to verify that applying your coupon works. I'm literally going through it manually, trying to test does the functionality of applying a coupon works. That's literally the test. The file name verify free coupon works. This is just a random. You can name your files anything you want. You want to be descriptive, but also not too long. Right? So it's going to hit enter. Then it's going to verify the total is 0. So if we look at the code, it's doing some Selenium stuff here. Selenium. Probably should have explained Selenium. Okay, let's just finish this and I'll do that. So now if we're manually testing this, we apply the coupon, then we're going to come here and we're going to look at the total, it's 0. Then we know the coupon worked. We also see there is a message here that says success, right? So as manual testing, that's what we're going to do. We're going to visually, we click on apply coupon or hit enter. In fact, those two are two different test cases. You want to make sure it works when you hit enter. You also want to make sure it works when you click on apply coupon. Those two are two different functionalities. The way this page is designed, those two things are supposed to work. It's a requirement or it's a specification, right? Hit enter, that should work, or click on apply coupon, that should work. So you would write two different tests for those two different scenarios. So manually, you would see that the message is here and the total is here, and you call it a day, right? You say, okay, the test success. That's what the code would do, okay? So Selenium is the tool we use to open the browser and interact. So that's what Selenium is. Selenium WebDriver specifically. So in Selenium, there is different components. There is Selenium RC. Oh no, RC is gone. There is Selenium IDE, which is a record and play. Professionals don't really use that. Selenium WebDriver is the most popular one we use. And then there is Selenium Grid, which is basically WebDriver, but you'll be able to run the same tests in multiple browsers at the same time. So normally it's called cross-browser testing. When you want to run a test, right now I am on Chrome. I make sure everything is working on Chrome. But at a job, you want to make sure your application works in the top popular browsers. You definitely want to test it on Firefox. You want to test it on Safari, and you want to test it on Edge, right? Some people maybe Internet Explorer because people still use that. So normally you would have data. Your company will have data. What percentage of your users use which browser, right? Usually it's like a high percentage, like 60, 70% of your customers use Chrome. Then you have like 20% using Firefox, and then you have 10% using Safari, right? So if 10% of your customers are using Safari, then that's significant. You want to make sure your application works in Safari. So you're going to run your tests in Safari. So Selenium would allow you to run the test in all the browsers at the same time to save time. So that's called Selenium Grid. But you don't have to learn that ahead of time. You just learn with Selenium WebDriver. And Selenium WebDriver is what's making this happen. Selenium WebDriver is what's opening the browser, interacting with everything we see and doing things. So now let's run this code here. So I'm going to open the terminal. Okay. In the terminal, guys, anybody that's already in the business, basically anybody in the software industry, somebody doing analytics or doing manual testing or getting started with automation, do not be intimidated with the terminal, guys. I noticed a lot of people are very much intimidated with the terminal. They don't want to use it. The terminal is just a way for us to command the computer. Normally what we do is we use a mouse. and a keyboard, right? We use a mouse and a keyboard. When we want to open a file, we double click. When we want to delete a file, we right click and click on delete. We're telling the computer what to do using the mouse and the keyboard, right? Mostly the mouse. We go somewhere, we click, we do this, we click. When we're clicking, we're telling the computer what to do. So that with the command line, we're doing the same thing, but we're using words instead of clicking. We're actually telling it what to do. We're going to say open something. Right now, for example, if I want to open Chrome, I'll come here and I'll click this, right? If I say open, I don't think it's going to work. Google Chrome, that's not going to work. You have to set it up. But if I take this URL and if I say open and give it the URL, it's smart enough to figure out, okay, this is the URL. I should use a browser. It's going to open the default browser. There you go. It just opened it, okay? So the terminal is just commands. You're just telling the computer what to do. If you want a Mac, there's different commands. If you're on Windows, there's different commands. But my point is, don't be afraid. Just get into it. Take a quick course on that. Ask ChatGPT to give you a little tutorial, like step by step. Just say, go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to use a terminal. I'm on Windows. What should I do? Give me step by step instructions, one at a time, and learn it. Just once you're familiar with it, you're really going to think, you're going to understand it's nothing but it's just for you to tell the computer what to do. So right now, I'm going to type clear. Right now, I just want to clear everything I just typed. Type clear, hit enter, the whole screen gets cleared. So what do I want to tell the computer to do right now? I want to tell it to run this Python file. Okay, so I'm going to say Python. Whenever you want to run a Python file, you're going to run Python. That's the executable you want to execute. If it was a Java file, you would say Java. If it was a JavaScript file, it depends. It might say Node or something like that. JavaScript is a little different. But with Python, it's simple. It's just Python and the file name. I'm going to say verify free coupon works, right? Python, the file name, hit enter. And now you see the browser open, right? You see Chrome opening down here. And then there you go. It's going to go to that page. It's going to click on my hands are free. It's doing it all. Add to cart. So this is a little issue here. It's a bug. He added to the cart, but when he got to the cart, it says cart is empty. Yeah, that's the site is having an issue. But then it's going to say fail. Right now, this is fail. This is an error. It says timeout exception, saying, hey, I waited, and I couldn't find that coupon field. Okay. If we look at this other script, this script is verify invalid user login error. So this guy, what does it do? It goes to my account. It will type in an email. It will type in a password. It will click on login. So this is going to be like an invalid user. So it's going to check for a message. What message is it going to looking for? It's looking for this message here on the page. The displayed error is not expected. No, it's looking for this guy. What is it looking for? Displayed error. Expected message. It's looking for this one. Unknown email address. Check again or try username. I'm making it fail on purpose by adding a typo. Let's run the script. Let's see if that one is working. Python verify invalid, right? Python, then the file name. Hit enter, and browser is opening. It's going to go to my account, typed in. See how fast it is? I didn't put any delays, so it's quite fast. Unknown email address, check again or try username. That's what it's expecting, and it's paused, but it's going to basically pass. So, I mean, you're not going to learn how to do this in the short demo, but at least you get the idea what a script is and what a front end is. Let's look at a bigger one. So here, those are just individual scripts. They're just Python scripts by themselves. One file has specific task and it can run on its own. This other file is doing its own thing. It can run on its own and so on, right? But normally when you run tests, you have a framework. Basically, it's a collection of files that they work with each other. And you don't put everything in one file. It's just tons of files working with each other. So this here is the framework that we build in the automation. There are in the bootcamp. There are 200 tests running here, about 100 front end and about 100 back end. So about 207, 208 tests. So here, when you look at this framework here, it's just a lot of different files. But this whole thing is one unit. It just works together. One file by itself doesn't do much. So like we'll go to we have a source folder which has a lot of like helper, Python script, Python files, we use a pattern called page object pattern. We have like a Python object or a Python class that represents a specific page, like a checkout page, the header, the home page, the my account page signed in, my account page signed out. So we have Python code like that. Then we have tests. We have backend tests and front-end tests. Inside of the front end, we have cards, component. So this is a framework that basically every file works together. All these tests here, they're going to import other code from the rest of the framework. And when you have a framework, you could write code much quicker because a lot of stuff is already done for you, and you just keep adding stuff to it, and it's just a much better way of working, uh, faster way of working. So let's look at one of these examples end to end. It's a front end example. A checkout as a guest user. So when we look at this test here, this is the process. Basically, goes to the home page, clicks on add first add item to cart. Click on the first add item to cart. Wait until the cart is updated, goes to the cart page. Again, here to slow it down, I put a bunch of sleeps, applies a coupon, goes to the checkout, and filling the billing information, okay? So I'm just going to run it. For some reason, it is failing, but at least we should be able to see most of it. In this case, the command is python-m, pytest-m, tcid33. So every test is like a function. In a test case, normally when you write tests, like we go to a page and we say, okay, we're going to test this, test this, test this. We're going to document that in some kind of test case management system. And we have IDs. For each of those tests, we have some IDs. And so when we automate it, we put ID next to it. So we know which ID belongs to which test case. And when we run the test, we can specify exactly which ID. So right now, I just told it, hey, run this test case ID 33. So it's opening the browser and it's going through the whole thing. Let's see. So while that is going, I'm going to look at my notes. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on the front end. So let's get to the back end stuff. So you get the idea. This is, front end stuff. It's going and filling all the form. You see how cool that is? Like it filled out this entire form so quickly. It placed that order received, verify order received. I think this is supposed to go to the database. That's probably where it's failing. After the order is received, it's going to go to the database and make sure the order is actually in the database. That's why you want to know SQL. If we look at this guy here, this is actually running SQL, select star from, right? So you want to know SQL even for front-end testing, because you do something in the front end and then you go verify that whatever you expect to happen, the front end said everything is good. The front end said, hey, your order is successfully created. But you want to go in the database and say, hey, is the order really there, right? Is it successfully written there? And when you create an order, a bunch of things are supposed to happen in the database. Usually, a lot of things, right? A lot of different tables, a lot of different information is recorded. You want to make sure all those informations are recorded. The front end might say good to go, but the back end, a lot of things happen. You want to make sure a lot of those things happen. Analytics wants something, legal wants something. All the other teams, especially if you're a public company, like every single data has to be really documented. So your test has to verify everything actually happened. So that is a front end test, Selenium in Python. So let's talk a little bit about backend. So what a backend is, to understand backend, we have to understand how software talks to each other. So this demo here is kind of shows the concept of API, but this one is really not the API. It's basically the concept of request and response. So when we look at this page here, right, this is Google Sheets. Where does this page come from? When we go to this URL, we see what we want. When we go to supersqa.com, we see the page. When we go to facebook.com, we see a bunch of information. What's happening is the browser is sending a request to the server somewhere. The name, right, supersqa.com, is going to point to some IP address, which is the address of some server somewhere in the cloud, most likely, right? So we're going to make a request saying, hey, give me this page. The server says, hey, it's going to look at our request. It's going to say, what are you requesting? Or you're requesting the home page. Okay, here it is. Then when we click on login and we put our username and password, again, the front end is going to send it to the server saying, hey, this guy wants to log in. This is the information. Then the server is going to do the analysis. It's going to look at the username. It's going to check the password. It's going to be like, do I know this guy? Oh, yeah, I know this guy. He's legit. Okay, here is the login information. After the login, this is the page. It will respond. So that's how it works, front end and back end. You make a request, you get a response. You make a request, you get a response. And the backend might be talking to a bunch of other backends too, right? So you might have the code that deals with soft coupons. You might have a code that deals with orders. You might have the code that deals with users. And once the backend gets a request saying, hey, log in this user, it might make another request to another server saying, hey, is this user legit? Get the response and pass it over here. Whenever we apply a coupon, the same server, the first server that gets it, will say, oh, let me go check the coupon service. It's going to go to the other server, get information, come back, right? So it's always request response, request response. So when we're doing API testing or backend testing, so backend testing can be general, databases backend, there's all kinds of backend tests, but specifically API testing, we're testing that. We're making a request, we get a response. So our test is basically when we make a request, do we get a response? When we make a request in a certain way, does the response comes back in a certain way, right? So let's look at actual examples of APIs. So Postman, this tool here, I'll show you a different example here. So normally an API, you have some information you need. First, you need the address. So this part is the address. This is the actual website where you're going to. Then you have the resource. So you can just think of it as a URL. You need the URL. When you make a request, where are you making a request to? You're making a request to somebody, and then that somebody you need to know where it is, right? So that's the address part. And once you get there, which resource? The first part, the address will take you to the server, and the resource will tell it what exactly to do in that server, right? And then you need to know the method. So I'm specifically talking about REST APIs. There's different kinds of APIs. There's GraphQL, there's SOAP, there's different kinds of APIs. Specifically, I'm talking about REST API because those are like really popular, right? Most of our stuff is REST. So you have the method, you have the get, call. So when you make a request, it's called a call. You're making a call, right? You're making a request, you're making a call. There's a get, call, a post, put, patch, all of those things you see. Get, post, delete are the most popular one. Like options, I don't think I've ever used them. 10 years doing this, never used it. Head, I've never used it. There is patch, I think I might have used once or twice. Get is the most popular one. That's when you like asking for information, you're getting some information. Post is when you're sending information, when you're making an update, when you're creating something, right? So you have a get and you have the URL. You're basically saying, hey, get me that information. Now you might not need to pass a bunch of a payload or data, or you might. So in this case, we don't have to pass anything. We do have to pass like authorization, password and username, or some kind of authorization, because an API is the software running somewhere on the server, and you're making a request to it. They need to know who you are. There are APIs that are like totally open. Anybody can make a request to that. But most of the time, you need to authenticate. You need to actually, they need to know who you are. So when you make the call, you're going to send information with that call. Oh, I am so and so. Give me this information. And that the server says, oh, okay, you have the access. You're good to go, and it will respond. So in this case, I'm doing get product. So I'm actually literally making an API call to my ecom website. So basically the bootcamp website, dev.bootstore. So it's the same kind of website, but it's just a whole different server, like I said. So I'm literally making an API call to this application, to this server, saying, hey, give me list of products. So I'm going to say send, and it's going to respond. So the step you see halfway below this line, that is the response. When you get an API response, there's always a status code. The first thing you look at is the status code. That's what's going to tell you what happened. Was it successful or not? Postman now looks fancy. Now they even have green. This did not. The 200 was always there, but it was not green. So 200 is good. 200 to 01 to 200 something is good. Usually 200. If you get a 400, anything that's not 200 is really not what you want. 300 is okay. It just means your request got redirected. 400 means something is wrong with the URL. They can't find it. Usually you get a 404. 404 means not found. 500 means like something really bad happened. Either the server is down, there's an error. So you don't want a 500 for sure. You don't want a 400. You want to get a 200 if you're expecting success. So as the testers, now we know what this API is. So you'll go look at the documentation. In fact, if I pull it up, so this is WordPress with WooCommerce. It's an awesome awesome API because it's a full production ready API that the world uses for real e-commerce. So, and it's totally free available for us. So we get to learn, we get to practice with a real application, not just some dummy test application, like real one. And it's huge. Like you can come up with thousands of tests for this. So this is just the API, like the documentation for the API. Right now we just looked at products. For some reason, the page is frozen. It's not letting me click. Hopefully it's not my computer. Let me see, refresh. Something is up. Let me see. The API works on my internet is fine. So this documentation basically shows something is up with their side right now. It shows how to make the API call, what are the fields and things like that. You can explore that later on. So I'm saying get products, and this is giving me a list of products. It gives me 10 of them. So this is the response, this format here. It's called a JSON format. It's really easy to parse for systems. It's basically key, value, key, value, key, value pair. And one JSON, if I contract this, one JSON represents one item. So, and this is an array or a list. So there's 10 products here. I can give it information. So when I send the request, I can pass in, I can say per page, I think one. So this probably will give me just one if I got it right. All right, so here I told it only give me one product. So it gave me one product. So when we make the API call, we get a response in a specific way, in however way we asked it to do that. So in this case, we said, give me one, and we got one. So imagine this now. What if we were testing this API? This itself is a good test. What happens if I ask it to give me just one? Does it give me one? That is a test. So in our code, in Postman, we can automate stuff, but I don't really do that. It's because very limited, depending on how simple it is, what you're trying to do. If you're doing like really complicated things, like real full-fledged automation for an e-commerce, you don't want to use Postman. You want to use like a framework with Python and Java or something like that. But if you just have this like a handful of APIs and you just make a request, verify the response, that's good. But usually you want to have different combinations in the request. So this is just one item that I'm making the request, but I can put a bunch of different unique scenarios when I'm making the request. So I need to write a test for those different combinations. So normally we would manually just what I'm doing right now is manually testing it using Postman. After that, I would go to my Python, my framework, and I would make the same thing happen in the code. That's really what we do. So in this case, I would say, hey, I want to write a test that says if I pass in this parameter, if I say per page one, do I get one? If I say per page two, make a request, do I get two? Okay, good. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to count this. And then other things, when we look at the fields, for example, the product type, I can say, give me products that are type of variable. Right now, I specified, give me two products, but I don't want all kinds of products. I just want variable products. So I'm going to make an API call, and now my tests would be like, okay, I asked for a variable product. Did I get a variable product? First, did I get two of them? Yeah, I got two of them. Are both variables? So I'm going to look at the first one. Type is variable. Cool. I'm going to look at the next one. Type is variable. Perfect. So I say the test pass. Maybe I want simple product. Right? You would need to know what are the available. So you would need to know the documentation. And if this is our work, the developers would have to provide to you what the API does, what it looks like, what does the request look like, what is the expected response. Somebody would have to tell you that, or they have to give you a documentation. So you're going to write tests saying, hey, doesn't match the documentation. What it's doing doesn't match what is expected. So that's really what you're doing with API. You make a request, you get a response. You make a request, you get a response. And APIs are really popular. The one I have this pulled up. This is a transcript, I think. Yeah, so this one, for example, what I was doing here is this is OpenAI, right? OpenAI is the company that made ChatGPT. So they have AI. So if I want to use AI other than ChatGPT, you just chat with it. But OpenAI, like the AI itself, it has so much functionality. They have an API exposed. So all I have to do is make a call to the API and I can literally build products. If you notice lately, there's a lot of products that use AI, like upload your image and we make it a cartoon, upload a long video, we break it into smaller videos. Like we just upload an image, upload 10 images, and we will generate a LinkedIn professional picture, right? They're not really inventing the AI that's doing that. Somebody created the AI, and people are building a tool that makes an API call to that AI. So this particular example is going to fail, but what I'm doing is I'm basically sending a request. Oh, I think this might work. So OpenAI has an API called speech that will text to speech, TTL, right? It will take text and it will return speech. And it's called speech. This is a model, or the model is one. Oops. So if I make the API call, it's not free. You call like, right, this call I just made right now probably costs like a penny or something. Then I get a response. So OpenAI, right? OpenAI have basically brain that does stuff. I literally use their functionality. I made a request saying, hey, here is a text. Give me sound, give me voice. And I chose what the voice. They have very limited, like 4 or 5 different voices. And look at this.
I love working on test automation, and Super SQA is the best place to learn it.
Now, I hope you guys can hear that. So it responded with volume. So now I can literally build a website saying, hey, I can give you text to speech. You guys can upload your text and I'll give you MP3, right? I can build a business. I can charge them for that. All I have to do is charge them more than what ChatGPT charged me. So right now with this API call, I just made an API call. ChatGPT probably charged me like half a penny, maybe not even half a penny, maybe like, I don't know, 1/10 of a penny for this, right? But I can charge customers, let's say I charge them a penny. I just made 10 times what I paid. I have to build the infrastructure and everything. So that's what APIs are used for. And that's why we need to test them. So whenever you work for a company, their API, they might be using somebody's API, or they might build an API and they expose it for other people to use them. And you're testing that. So when other people use it, it actually works. So that is what backend testing is. That's what API is. In my courses, whether it's self-paced course or the bootcamp, we focus on testing this e-commerce API. There's all kinds of API. There's orders, product, customers, coupons. All of those are basically APIs for e-commerce. We can, like this one, for example, is you create a coupon. If you want to create a coupon 100% off, you make a post call. With the examples we saw were all get calls. We make a post call. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but as an automation engineer, you would start with a language. You would start with a testing tool like Selenium, then SQL, then the next thing would be like API testing, because you want to be a full-rounded automation engineer. Now, we write our code. So here, when you have a framework like this, you would have like backend tests. These are tests for like the coupon API. Like for example, creating a coupon, right? Create coupon smoke test. This is literally making API call, right? It makes an API call with some kind of coupon code, and it will get the response, and it parses the response saying, hey, when I make the API call to create a coupon, and the API responds with some data, does that data looks like what I want to do, what I expect it to look like? So we have a bunch of tests here. And we write it, sure, we run it locally. So right now I can run every backend test. I'm just going to run it because backend doesn't open the browser so fast. So right now I just run a command to run every backend test. But are you going to do this every day? You're not, okay? Once you once you write the code has to run somewhere in a pipeline, somewhere in Jenkins or GitLab, somewhere where the code is being deployed. Every company would have a place where they run code. If it's like a total startup, they just might have servers, and you might literally manually copy the code from your machine into that server and run it. But a lot of times there is a process. Now, that's where GitHub comes in the picture. I'm sure everybody have heard of GitHub, okay? So GitHub is a place where we store code. It's basically, think of it as Google Drive, but just for code and on steroids, right? It manages version. It's a version control. So we can keep track of code. Once we put our code into Git, every change we make, everything we do with that code, there's a history of it. Basically, everything we do to the code, there's a history. So if we make mistakes and we want to go back to an older version, it makes it super easy. So the code always goes into Git. It lives in Git. Then, so we have an application. Let's say, so this code here, this is actually a to-do app. If I go to to-do.supersql.com, this is the application once it's deployed. So in GitHub, the code is just living there. Then you take that code and you put it into some machine, some server, so it can run, right? It doesn't run in GitHub. It runs on some server. Once it's running on the server, you can configure it so that people can access it. So that's what I did here. I have the code here. It lives in GitHub. I took it, put it into a server, and now I can access it. It's an actual to-do app that really works, right? You can create a task. You can do some blah 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 blah. Hit enter, and there you go. There is a task that got created. Okay, so now let's say we are testers for this app. We write automation to test this. We have an automation that makes sure back to home button works, add a new task works. Actually, adding a task works, right? I probably should create automation. I don't have automation for this, but we're testing this. Now, there is a process. It doesn't just go, the code doesn't just go to this production environment. Usually there is different versions of the app. So when we look at, if we look at this version, there's a dev version. So to do app .dev, right? So this will be like a version of the app that the public cannot access. So when you build the code, you're going to deploy it into some server, but it's not open to the public. Only people that work at the company can access it because you have to be within some kind of network. You have to use a VPN or you have to be in the office. You can access it. So what happens is you write the code, you put the code into this server, the public cannot access it, then you test it here. Because if there is an issue, the public have no idea. The public has a different version, the production version. If you hear the word prod or production, that's what it means. It's a final version that's open to the public. So that one is still there, but the new code gets deployed into some environment, gets tested. Then once it's tested, everything is good, then you put it into the production. But there's multiple steps. You have the dev server, then you have the test server, and then you have a staging server, usually, right? You might only have one staging server. You go from the developer computer into the temporary machine, and then finally to the prod, or you might have multiple in between. My experience, we have multiple. The first one is super corrupted. The code is always failing. There is all kinds of issues. Then it goes into a test environment, much more cleaner. The code works as expected. That's where we do all our automation. We run all our automation because that environment is set up in a way that looks just like production. So if the code works, the application works properly here, it's more likely to work properly in production. So we do that. So right now we have the dev version of this. If we go to do that test, this is a test version, and we already saw the prod version, okay? Let's go to the homepage, okay? So now, the way this happens is in a CI/CD, and there is a CI/CD tool called Jenkins, okay? If I go to the dashboard, when you, like first day at work, they give you access to Jenkins, it's going to look like this. Well, of course, the demo gods, every time you try to show something, there you go. So it will look like this, maybe a lot more jobs than this. This is just every job here, what you see here, does a specific thing. It basically runs code or sends an email or who knows what is doing, but it's doing a specific thing. So this is every single thing is doing something, and there is a pipeline. So if we look at this pipeline, this is called a view. I'm not trying to get too detailed into Jenkins, but this is like a pipeline that will take the code and deploy it into the server. So for example, and the first job right here is basically, this is all connected to GitHub. Jenkins is connected to GitHub, and it's listening for changes. It's going to say, it's configured to listen every 5 minutes or whatever to go check in GitHub and see if there's any new code. It's going to be like 5 minutes. Ping, ping. It's going to ping. It's going to pull it, saying, hey, is there a new code? Is there a new code? Is there a new code? As soon as it sees a new code, it'll be like, oh, there is a new code. Let me build it. It starts to build it and deploys it into prod, into dev. So what happens is in a true CI, I did not set this up as a true CI, true CI/CD. In a true CI/CD, this guy would check if there's a new code. If there's a new code, it's going to be like, oh, okay, there's a new code. Let me take that code, put it into the dev server. So it would put it into this site, into this server. Then it's going to trigger this job that will run smoke tests. It's like some of the automation. Then if this job passes, it will just run a smoke test, like a small set of tests, like the most critical parts of the application. If this passes, then it will trigger this regression. This is like a full suite. Every test, it will run that. And if this passes, it's going to say, okay, automation passed. Everything looks good. Let's take the code and put it into the next environment, the test environment, which is much more stable. It deploys it to test. Once the code is deployed to test, the next job will trigger, and this job would actually run tests. And then this job will say, if the test pass 100%, it will deploy to staging. And once it's deployed to staging, it will deploy to prod. Again, this is not like a set in stone rule, right? Some companies might have pull, deploy to test, deploy, run automation, deploy to prod. They might keep it simple. Or like I have it here, it goes to dev first, then automation runs, it goes to test, automation runs, it goes to staging. Maybe there's a little bit more automation, like a smoke test and staging, then goes to prod. Like that, I just want to get you the idea of the process and how Jenkins comes in the picture and how we come in the picture. So we're not responsible for this whole pipeline as testers, as QA. There's DevOps people that work on this, right? There's like an entire team that works on this usually. Our job is the automation, right? So the code gets deployed to dev. Once it goes to that particular environment, whether dev or test, once the code goes there, it's up to us to test it, to verify it's good to go before it goes to the next step. So we have to understand how CI/CD works. We have to understand how Jenkins works. So we can take our code and we bring it here. Okay. So that's why I want to bring CI/CD here. Once we write our code, what happens to it? It is scheduled. In this particular job, we go into here, we go to configure. This job here, its job or its purpose will be basically it will be configured. Right now, it's not doing anything. It's just printing a message. It will be configured to run tests, just like I run tests here. Like I just run all the backend tests. 99 passed, 4 failed. Right. The command I run here, it would run here, and this job literally would run all the automation, and we can configure that only deploy the code to the next stage if the automation passed. That's really what's going on here. I can quickly show you the deployment. So if I was to go change, go to templates, go to index, I'm just going to change color. I'm going to edit. I'm going to do it in the main branch. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to just change the color to blue. Commit changes, commit changes. All right. So I just made a code change. So if I was, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to wait. If I wait for it, this one, I think it's configured to check every 5 minutes. Let's see how long is, yeah, it's checking every 5 minutes here. I'm not going to wait 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, it would have sensed that I just made a change. I just made a code change and it would have triggered this. So I'm going to just manually trigger it. I'm going to click on run. And it's going to ask me which branch do I want to run. I made the change on the main branch. So I'm going to tell it, hey, build main branch. So what this job does is going to go to GitHub, get the code, and literally puts it into the server. If we look at the code, it's not always the way you do it. And we don't have to deal with this. DevOps does this normally. But all this is doing is like it will check out the code. There's a Git part up here. It checks out the code, and then it will just copy it. SCP is copy. We'll copy to the other server and we'll basically restart. It's a Python, it's a Flask app. It will just restart the server. So if we go to dev right now, and if I refresh it, the new code is here. I just changed the background color, so it should be like ugly. I made it blue, right? Whoa, right? I made a change to the code, and now this is a totally different server. Now, if we go to test and refresh, that new code is not on test. What would have happened normally is this job ran, right? So it would have executed this, and if this two pass, then they would trigger this. I'm going to manually trigger this, build it. Now this job is going to take the code and put it into the test environment. So it takes a few minutes. These jobs are really quite fast. There you go. Now test environment has the new code. It's like this is making my eyes hurt. So that's what CI/CD is. That's what Jenkins is, and that's why we need to know. Because a lot of people ask me, "I'm a tester. Why do I care about CI/CD?" Because the tests you write, they're going to live in a CI/CD. The whole point of writing tests, the whole point of doing automation is, at the end of the day, you're going to take what you wrote and you're going to integrate it with CI/CD. Even if it's not CI/CD, you're integrated with the development process. So the example I showed you right now, it's not truly CI/CD because they're not chained together yet. But it's just a matter of chaining them. I manually have to click those. right now. But normally you would have to, a CI means continuous integration. CD is continuous delivery. So as soon as the developer makes a code change, basically the code goes out all the way to production. So what's the most important thing for that? Your automation has to be really good. You have to have really good automation and you have to have really good coverage because a human is not going to test it. You write a code before you even get a chance to test it, it's out to the public, right? So your automation is extremely important. And there's a lot of eyes on you. If a company is doing a true CI/CD, the automation engineer, there's a lot of eyes on you. Like, why is the automation not passing 100%? And it is so difficult to have an automation run 100%, especially when you have hundreds and thousands of tests to get them to pass 100%. It's hard. That's why we have jobs. We have to maintain them. Automation fails all the time, especially front end. Front end is so flaky. That's why I love backend. I'm totally into automation, automating the backend, the APIs. But of course, I do front end also. So that's really what I want to show you. That is technically the bulk of my presentation. Hopefully, you learned a lot about automation, what you're getting into if you're just getting started in automation. If you already know automation, then you know what you're doing already. If you are learning, then you know this is where you're going. If you already, like, let's say you're one of my students and you already took my courses, you should understand everything I just said. Minus maybe the CI/CD because I don't have the self-paced course for CI/CD yet. I'm working on it. So you might not get the CI/CD, but like writing automation for front end, writing automation for APIs. I have all those courses. So if you already been through that, all of this should have made sense to you. But if it hasn't, if you're just getting started, then this should excite you because this is what you're going to be able to do. All right. So in the bootcamp, somebody asked what's the difference. It's all guided, right? You're working with me. I'm looking at your work. I'm literally giving you feedback to the stuff you do. It's live. We meet twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m., the same time as this presentation on Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months. And after 3 months, we meet once a month. And you just continue to work on the project, like basically automating this, the tests that I just showed you. 100 front end, this is back end, 100 back end, 100 front end. In 3 months, you're not going to finish that unless you're doing this full time. If you're learning, if you're doing the boot camp full time, you might be able to finish it. If not, it's going to take time to like really practice and code. So after the 3 months, you just continue to work on that, and I continue to interact with you. So it's a really good program. It's really awesome. I mean, it's just real engineering. Like the way I designed it is to make it like a job. It's as if you go to a job and you whatever you experience out of work, that's the experience I try to give you in the bootcamp. That's really my goal, my ultimate goal. It starts next week, the Tuesday, January 21st. That's when it's going to start. Go to basically supersqa.com/bootcamp, or if you just go to the homepage and click on bootcamp. If you're totally new, take this free course, just software testing fundamentals, it's manual testing. So if you go to the live bootcamp, you get all the information here, the schedule, everything. It's just this page. This is the best I can do with my design. This student, Kara, she literally got a job before she even finished the program. She's so awesome. People love it. Read these reviews. Those are like 100% real reviews, and you can see how long. If you go to actual reviews, the links are there to go to the actual to Trustpilot. They're so happy. They write like a whole book on for the reviews. I love my students. They're just awesome. So this is a schedule. This is the price. It's 2,500. But like I said, for attending this or even watching the recording, I am going to give you $500 off because the price just went up. I had it for an early bird pricing for 1997, under 2000 for a while. And like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, it went up to 2,500. So I will give you 1997. Send me an email, please. If you're interested, just give me an email and I'll just send you the link. You need a special link because if you click on any of those, you have to pay this much. You have a payment plan which is like no interest, no net in-house, and you have a third-party payment plan. This is like people are familiar with those companies. Afterpay and Klarna, you can use one of those. You can get as low as $200 a month, but there's like a 6% interest or something. I have nothing to do with that, so I'm not sure, but I think it's about 6% interest. So it's actually a good deal for 12 months. So check it out. Let me know. This is not the price for you. 1997 is the price. So let me enable your mics so you can unmute yourself whenever you want, and you can actually speak. I'll take questions. How does the program vary from your self-paced program? I've struggled with the self-paced program. Well, talk to me. Why did you struggle? It all depends, right? Maybe that's the solution, having the guide. But like every week, I'm giving you homework. Do this, do that. I'm looking at where you get stuck. It's managed through Slack, and not just the community, but the Slack for the bootcamp. I have Slack. You see it right here. So it's live questions. Whenever you have a question, you ask live. I'm usually online, so I just respond. More support is coaching, mentorship. So if the self-paced is difficult, then maybe that's what you need. Maybe that's you need a little bit of hand-holding, right? It's more intense. It's more a lot of stuff together. So a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, but there's no end. There's no pressure for you to finish in 3 months. After that, just continue to work on it. I have people from a year ago that I'm still communicating. I'm still looking at their code, reviewing their code, talking about job search. We still meet every month. So that's a big difference. Next question. Your dogs are driving you nuts. Okay, I'll send you the recording. Automation in relation to non-functional testing. Munir, could you explain automation in relation to non-functional testing? So I would imagine non-functional testing is like the UI. Like if I was testing this page here, non-functional would be like, hey, is this heading displayed? Is this text displayed? Is those three boxes displayed? Are they in the right order? Right? That's non-functional. Functional would be like when you click it, does a pop-up show up? When you fill in the form, when you click on these things here, does it function? Does it work? So functional and non-functional, that's the difference. Non-functional is basically it's not functional like the way it looks, visual, aesthetics. Functional is when you actually use it, do things. But when it comes to automation, it's the same. You're going to automate the non-functional. In Selenium, you're going to say, hey, verify pricing is there, verify this is there, verify clicking this works. That's functional. So there's no difference when it comes to automation, whether it's functional or non-functional, in the way I look at it. Why is access limited to 1 year instead of full time lifetime? For the bootcamp, the because of value, we can talk if you need 1 year for the recording. I'm thinking so after the bootcamp is over, the recording is available for 1 year. It's because you paid for it once and it takes up space. For I have to pay for hosting and I have a limited space of courses. That's why I give 1 year, and after a year, I use up the slot. But there's always ways around that, so we can talk if you need access. But if you need access to the class recordings after a year, something is not going right, right? You don't have to worry about that. Plus, I have people that have issues like personal problems and they couldn't finish the bootcamp, and I always let them join the next one, right? I'm never saying no. As long as I have a bootcamp running, I always allow people to repeat because life happens. They'll be like 1 month into it and they have emergencies, they can't continue. Or sometimes maybe they just get overwhelmed or something like that. They can't continue. I've always said, okay, when they want to join the next one. So after a year, you do not need the recording. That definitely not. By a year, you're way advanced for that. So don't worry about that. It's a great question that you're thinking ahead, but that's not a problem. How labs are there? So labs are basically the work, the project you do, right? We come in class, I automate in class, especially the second half, I automate in class, and at home you go automate. Whatever I automate plus more to get my certificate. So at the end, I provide a certificate and I set requirements. The requirements is to automate 100 test cases, a mix of front end and back end. However, you want to mix and match, right? The number of the ratio is up to you. You want to do 50 front end, 50 back end. You can. If you want to do 75 front end, 25 back end, you can. Some people might want to focus on one thing. I have a requirement of 100 test cases. You have to set up a CI/CD pipeline in Jenkins, just like the one I showed. Also in GitLab, I did not show it here, but that's also a requirement. You have to run your tests in Docker. So doing those work, that is the lab, right? It's not like a chemistry lab where I have to sit there and watch you do your experiment. You have to write code, and the way you share the code to me is through GitHub. You're going to put your code into GitHub, you send a pull request, just like you would at a job. At a job, when you write code and you create a pull request for other developers to review. So you send me pull requests, I review your pull request, give you feedback, we go back and forth. So I'm at that point, I'm like your colleague. That's how you would treat me. Hey, here's my work. Can you give me feedback? When you get stuck, we get on a Zoom call one-on-one sometimes. Sometimes I invite everybody in the class. A lot of times we figure out a lot of things through chat, most of the time, but sometimes we just can't figure it out, or it's easier to just jump on a call and be like, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call and we just talk about it. Um, Okay, that's basically the lab. It's all coding, so it's all lab, literally. It's all like it's hands-on. It's like I was saying earlier, it's a sport. You have to keep practicing and practicing, practicing. So the whole thing is a lab. Do you have any knowledge or experience with Qualia? No, but I do want to look into it later. I'm gonna save it in my notes real quick. Qualia, okay? Where is my notes up? Yeah, I'll look into it. I do not. Can't copy for some reason. Qualia. Look into it. Okay. No. So if you move, it's a framework. Okay, that's interesting. Don't be intimidated if, especially if you've done any automation. Once you learn one of the frameworks and you're comfortable, learning a brand new framework is actually not bad. You have to invest time, but it's just going to be a couple of days as opposed to the first time, which is a couple of months. So yeah, I'm not familiar with it, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. No, all the courses are on Udemy or only on your webpage. I only have like an older version of the three courses on Udemy. Like a Docker course is not on Udemy, SQL is not on Udemy, um, and the Python and Selenium are Python, Selenium, API testing, and I guess BDD. But I don't make any updates to the Udemy one. No AI or anything. I might in the future, but so far no. Yeah. The bootcamp, obviously, not on Udemy. Those are just the self-paced. And buying the self-paced on my website is much cheaper, I believe, because there's more courses. I'm a technical writer that is interested in creating automated tests for our API documentation. Is it possible? Yeah, I saw your email. It's just a busy day, Tracy. I'll respond to you later, okay? Yeah, of course. It's definitely it's simple. I would need to understand a little bit. I might need to jump on a call and just explain it to me because when you say API documentation, you're automating the API documentation, but it is possible. You will need basic Python. You need Python. So when you're doing backend automation, the beautiful part is other than Python, you don't need a specialized tool. So for a front-end automation, you need Python, then you need Selenium or Playwright, right? You need another tool for automating the front end. With backend, you just need Python because Python is the one that's making an API call. Everything is just Python code. You make an API call, you get a response, and you parse the response. You look at the response. The way you look at the response is through Python. So the backend is much easier in that regard. So yeah, I can take a look and have a little bit of discussion and give you my thoughts. Sure. I'll respond to your email later, and if that, yeah, I don't have a lot of context, so I probably that email is not going to be very helpful. But maybe you can jump on a call and you can explain to me or show me something, and I can give you guidance for sure. Cool. So those are all the questions in the chat. Any other questions, guys? I put this contact information here, my phone number, my emails, of course, the website. I'd love to have you in that bootcamp. Starts next week. It's a small group, so I get to know you. That's a big advantage. It's not like the hundreds or tens, like it's under 10. Usually it's under 10 number of people. So I get to work with, it's like you're having like a personal coach, really. So there's a huge advantage. Most people appreciate that aspect, getting that coaching. All right. It's 90 minutes. I can stay answer questions, but I officially want to thank everybody because I don't want to hold you more than what I promised or what I committed. So thank you for joining me. Thanks for showing up. I really appreciate it, guys. Everybody. Hopefully you learned something. That's really the main goal. I know I want you to join my bootcamp, of course, but that's really not the ultimate goal. I hope now you know more about automation. Maybe you get interested in automation. And I know the bootcamp is not cheap at all. But for the value, it's the cheapest. Definitely, it's the cheapest ever. But I, it's a lot of money. So if you can't really commit to that, go ahead and just use your resources and just learn. This stuff you can definitely learn. It's a lot harder than having a coach, but you can definitely learn. You can just definitely get into it. It's an awesome career. I think it just changed my life. So I think I'm pretty sure it would do the same for you. It's a really great career, and the future is bright with AI. We're going to be using AI. AI did not penetrate QA as much as it did everywhere else. So that's going to be a big focus also on this bootcamp, like how to leverage AI, how to use AI. So it's just being in the tech industry is, I think, the most important thing going forward, right? Because being able to use AI and contribute AI to AI is important. This is just a really good starting point to that. That's my opinion. So, anyways, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it.